Hi, welcome to The Breakdown, the show where we discuss a wide range of important topics that you might not have heard about. Thanks for joining us. I'm James Sayer, your host. We've got Jordan Pierce back again with us tonight. How are you doing, Jordan?
Just fine, thanks, James. How are you?
Doing very well, Jordan. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. Thank you for having me on.
As always, a pleasure. Now, tonight we're talking about Housing First, a relatively new housing strategy to fight homelessness, which is a very serious problem in the United States and many other parts of the world. In the United States, almost 600,000 people are estimated to be homeless on any given night of the year. And that's according to HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Now, the concept of Housing First was first developed in the late 1980s, where housing is viewed from this concept as a fundamental human need and right that should be provided without preconditions, like the more common traditional housing program approach where people are required to be employed or sober or involved in or having completed some type of treatment or counseling program. Now, the philosophy of Housing First is based on the belief that people who are experiencing homelessness have a much better chance at turning their lives around if they actually have a place to live versus trying to get it together living under a bridge. Now, opponents of Housing First argue that not requiring people to have a job, not requiring them to be sober or drug-free or involved or completing certain types of behavioral improvement programs, that this not requiring that encourages a certain laziness, no personal accountability or responsibility, and allows them to continue with self-destructive behavior that may have caused their homelessness crisis in the first place. But over the last 3 decades of the Housing First research, pilot programs, and then larger implementation, the data overwhelmingly seems to support Housing First as an effective tool for ending homelessness versus the more traditional conditional requirement-oriented approach. So the question here is tonight, can we expand Housing First nationwide at a scale to end homelessness in America? So what do you think, Jordan? What do you know? We've talked about Housing First a little bit. What are your thoughts initially here?
Right now, no, we absolutely could not expand this in this country.
I would say, right. I mean, funding's a problem, right? That's definitely an issue.
Well, I mean, and there it is. The laziness and the entitlement that gets placed upon the people that would presumably benefit from the housing crisis in the United States is already being exploited by a different class that I dare not name. But on
Right,
top
yeah,
of
there's a lot
that,
of people that write these things, these programs,
I mean,
right? Housing,
on top of that, I mean, like the United States, as being a proud capitalist nation, if you're homeless, then obviously you don't work hard enough. So if you would just work harder, then you would get all the things that were coming to you from your hard work.
right. There's lots, and right, there's this concept some people have of like homeless people just not wanting to work and being lazy.
Well, if they wanted a house, they would obviously stop being poor, right?
Right. They would just get a job and then get a place to live and
Well,
then and have a car
it's
and
like George Thorogood said, get a haircut and get a real job.
right. They would just do that and then they would be fine. You
Yeah.
know,
All
that's
right. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the breakdown tonight. Sorry.
No, but I mean, there are lots of reasons for homelessness, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
more
No. There's so far beyond
so,
lack of income. I mean, yeah.
yeah. Well, like you lose
Um,
your job. You lose your job, right? If you don't find a new one in time that pays the bills, you're homeless.
right.
Unless you can stay with a friend or your mom or dad or girlfriend, right? Unless you can
Well,
rely
yeah,
on.
we don't all play drums in a rock band now, do we?
No, that's true. We don't. But you have, so you know from experience. Uh,
Yes, and when I was kicked out of that band, I lost my girlfriend and my home. So, uh,
were you a homeless musician? Was that
well, well, no, I was a homeless drummer. Uh,
so that you were the drummer?
until I got a job and a girlfriend. Um, I feel like we've already gone off the rails here. I
We're definitely
apologize.
going off the rails here. So, but we were talking about causes of homelessness. Like there's lots, right? A lot of people have mental health issues that aren't their fault, right? Somebody who's schizophrenic, they don't choose to be that. It just, it's something that occurs to them, right? And they can't necessarily just get a job when they're hearing voices, right, and seeing hallucinations, things like that. There are people with, people who ran away from home because they were being abused at home, either violence or sexual or otherwise, right? People who have disabilities, they can't work, right, because they're disabled. Right. There's lots of reasons. Veterans, right? We, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, on any given night, about 35,000 veterans are homeless in the United States. But you also have, as a total number, about 600, almost 600,000.
Almost 600,000. So, like, yeah.
According to the Housing and Urban Development, yeah. Almost 600,000. I think it was January of 2022 when they did the survey. It was like 582,000 people were homeless on one night in January of last year. Yeah, and that was their sort of point in time estimate that they did. So yeah, I mean you got 600,000 people that are homeless across the country, and obviously it's a problem in a lot of places. We see it here in Portland. Certainly, it's really bad in a lot of cities, especially places like San Francisco and Los Angeles. But a lot of other places too. I mean, you've been on the West Coast. I mean, your whole life pretty much, right? So you've seen and you've seen the homeless situation here, like in Portland and in San Francisco too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like I've seen it in pretty much every city that like I've been around. And I remember as a child, like every once in a while, you would like notice, oh, that person is sitting over there in front of a tent, but like over here in like a shaded woody area. I mean, like, and it was few and far between. These days, I mean, like driving toward the city, I mean, like I've been pretty much like not stuck in Portland, but like located in Portland for the last several years, especially since like COVID and all that, yada yada. But I mean, the number of even like campground looking like areas where there's several tents or several shelters put up, or just on the street where people have put up shelters for themselves on sidewalks, even like downtown in Portland, has risen a lot. And
yeah, I mean things have, I mean, rent has skyrocketed since 2000. I remember it was so much cheaper back in the day, and then like in the last 20 plus years, there's actually, I've got a few stats on that. Where is it? The affordable housing is a huge issue across our country, and that is a major driver of homelessness for a lot of people, and stress for even those who do have housing. But since 2000, this is according to data from both the Census Bureau and the Department of Housing and Urban Development from 2022. Since 2000, median home prices have risen 160% since 2000. Last 22, that was 2022. So 22 years, it went up 160%. Housing prices increased more than 30% from 2020 to 2022, just in those 2 years. And that was largely driven, according to Census and HUD, largely driven by COVID, right? And but then also the inflation that followed, that all the inflation that took place following COVID, that also helped to drive the home prices, which were already high to begin with, and then increased 16% from 2021 to 2022. So in 1 year's time, it increased 16%. And just to give you an idea of like how bad it is for a snapshot example in Los Angeles, then this is according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, that in Los Angeles, while 207 people experiencing homelessness actually secure housing every single day in Los Angeles County, 207 of them, homeless people secure housing every day. Another 227 people become homeless every day, right? So you have basically, 20 more people every day becoming homeless than you have people getting a home. So it's going up, 20 people every day, basically, on average. That's just Los Angeles, right? We've seen, across the country, the housing prices are just they've gone up, and it puts the pressure on everyone. It puts the pressure on workers, right? And you just if you're talking about like healthcare costs, right? If you get sick, you're just like one illness away from being financially wiped out, right? And potentially
or car trouble,
right? All sorts of things that can happen, right? And then, rent being so high as it is, it doesn't take much. If someone loses a job, I mean, you can have two parents that are working, right? A family with both parents working, and if even just one of those parents loses a job, the family can become homeless, right? You don't always have friends and family to rely on, and there's a lot of things that can happen to people that have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with being lazy or not wanting to work. But basically, like I was saying at the beginning, the philosophy behind Housing First is that it's a basic human right, and that it's a recovery oriented approach based on evidence, and it recognizes that housing is a right and that people are better equipped to make progress in their lives if they have a safe, stable place to live. It's if you're going to clean up your act, if you're going to try and turn things around, whatever you're going to do, how are you going to do that living out of your car or living under a bridge or living in a tent? It's just, it's that much harder to do anything in that type of situation. And so through housing First, people can access permanent housing without having to meet any of these prerequisites I mentioned, like sobriety or completing some type of program, attaining a job, things like that. It recognizes that, first and foremost, housing is a crisis, and that the way to address that and to resolve it is by providing safe, affordable housing. And it prioritizes like basically people's needs, basic needs like food and shelter, above the like less critical necessities like employment, income, or sobriety. And there's two main ways that Housing First is typically implemented. One is through permanent supportive housing, which is geared towards like families and people who have experienced recurring long-term homelessness, often have chronic medical or issues or disabilities, mental health conditions, or substance use disorders. And that permanent supportive housing, what that does is it combines both supportive services with long-term rental assistance. So they get rental assistance to pay for the housing. The other form of housing that's used for Housing First is rapid rehousing, which it's a short-term assistance for individuals and families. And it provides services and resources customized to the specific needs of the individual or family, which could include rental assistance or housing navigation services or case management. But the basic idea behind Housing First is that they have all these services that they can provide, but you're not required to use them, right? Like other traditional programs might require you to use the services that they have to have housing, right? But under Housing First, you don't have to participate in these other services. It's optional. But they found that by making these services optional, as opposed to mandatory, and by removing the preconditions of like sobriety or being involved in some type of program, that people are more likely to stay housed and to use the services if it's not mandatory. It's guided. So Housing First is guided by the principle that people basically should have agency in both their housing choice and in the participation of services. And that it supports the idea that people who are homeless, they have, just because you're homeless, you still have a right to, being treated with dignity and respect. So anyway, some of the successes, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, research has demonstrated that permanent supportive housing programs have long-term retention rates of up to 98%. Rapid rehousing, the short-term version we were talking about of Housing First, can help people exit homelessness as quickly as an average of 2 months and keep them housed. And research has also revealed that between 75 and 91% of households remain housed a year after participating in a rapid rehousing program using Housing First. And that's, again, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, which is a nonprofit, that studies and advocates for ending homelessness and various, is a pro-Housing First organization as well. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition, another homeless advocacy organization, nonprofit, has stated unequivocally that Housing First rapidly ends homelessness. It says it's cost-effective, positively impacts the quality of life and community functioning, particularly effective among people who have been homeless for long periods of time, with serious psychiatric disabilities, substance abuse disorders, or other disabilities. And Housing First results in higher rates of housing retention. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition cites a systematic review of 26 different studies that found that Housing First programs decrease homelessness, increase housing stability, and improve the quality of life for people experiencing homelessness. And that there are economic benefits that exceed the intervention costs for Housing First. So it's actually cheaper to implement Housing First than it is not to. So then they cited, for example, every dollar that is invested using the Housing First model results in $1.44 in cost savings. And that's according to the Community Preventative Services Task Force, which is an independent panel of public health and prevention experts appointed by the director of the U.S. Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention, the CDC.
Well, yeah, but those are the guys that told us to wear masks during COVID. So,
right, right. The guys who've listened to science, right, which is a good thing. But there have been a number of other studies that have also found, also confirmed these. There were a number of different studies done studying the Housing First model implemented by the New York Pathways to Housing program. One in 2000, one in 2004, and then I think another one in 2004. They all found that Housing First was highly effective in providing people with stable, affordable housing with services under their control, and that when they were given this, like 79% remained stably housed at the end of 6 months, compared to 27% in the control group. So that's a huge difference. Right, the people who are getting the typical traditional type of housing where you have to meet certain requirements, preconditions, 27% are staying in that, versus 79% are staying in the one where there are no preconditions. So I mean that's a very clear example. So there's a lot of data, and I first started studying Housing First in grad school probably around 2007 or 2008, I think. And it caught my attention right away as the way to go, right? Already there was a decent amount of data that made it look like this is what should be done. And since then, the wealth of data supporting the effectiveness of Housing First has just exploded. So yeah, both the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, and the Department of Veterans Affairs announced on January 26th that more than 140,000 people experiencing homelessness have been permanently housed using the Housing First approach
Is
through
this
their
in the
program.
U.S.?
This is the U.S., yeah.
Okay.
More than 140,000 people have been permanently housed using the Housing First approach through the House America program. Um, yeah, HUD and the USICH helped 105 communities permanently house more than 100,000 households experiencing homelessness and add over 40,000 deeply affordable housing units to their development pipelines. And the VA helped permanently house more than 40,000 veterans experiencing homelessness in 2022, exceeding by 6.3% the department's goal of housing 38,000 veterans. The VA cites Housing First as a best practice and uses this approach in its HUD Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program. Today, the HUD Veterans Affairs Supporting Housing Program serves nearly 90,000 veterans using the Housing First model with 137 public housing authorities across the nation. So it is being done, right? It is being implemented at a much larger scale than it was previously. Obviously, still not enough, right? But you can see that it is being implemented by different states and organizations and even the federal government, right? Both the VA and HUD. I mean, you're talking about that's pretty significant commitment of resources, but still not nearly enough. So, I mean, we saw there has been a decrease. Actually, this is good news, right? We were talking about how 35,000 veterans are homeless. We talked about that earlier on any given night, but that's an improvement. That's actually down 11%. That's a decrease of 11%. So for veterans since 2016, according to HUD.
Wow.
So now there has been, I think, what was it, a decrease in. I think there's an increase in people for who are a decrease in houselessness for people living in shelters. So people staying in shelters and things like that, they've been able to knock down that number of people staying in shelters. These housing programs have been able to reduce that. There's been a reduction in those numbers of people staying in shelters. But the number of people homeless, not being in a shelter, unsheltered, just out, right? In your car, under a bridge, in a tent, right? That number has gone up. That number is like 3%. So it's a problem that it's been increasing since 2016. They kind of level. It probably should have been a lot worse during COVID, but because of it's like in spite of COVID, there was only a 0.3% increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness from like 2020 to 22 because of investments, partnerships, and government agency outreach. Well, so the point in time study that was done by HUD that they did in January of 2022, what they were looking at was one night, right? On a single night in January of 2022, that 582,462 people on this one night in January 2022 were homeless. Right, so that's an estimate. That's one night they found that many people to be homeless. So that gives you some idea. It's going to fluctuate a little bit, but on one night, that's the number of homeless people.
And that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, like there's a lot of cities in this country that have way less than that are considered like big cities.
Yeah, it's like a big city of homeless people. Yeah. So, but spread out all over the country. But we've seen it here in Portland. It's a major problem. I mean, the apartment I used to live in, there was a housing or housing. There was a homeless couple homeless folks living in a couple tents, maybe 50 feet from my back patio, and you see that kind of set up in a lot of places where because one. Okay, so homelessness is a problem across our whole country because a lot of reasons. One of it's because housing is really expensive. Uh, but they also a lot of homeless folks like to come to the west, right? Because it's warmer, right? So that you see on the west coast, we're also more liberal, so we tend to be nicer to the homeless. That the services we have, that there's more of them available than say like more conservative states that just they tend not to have as much funding available, right? They don't make as much money available for helping the homeless to begin with. And they often, a lot of those states,
with
that are more
vagrancy laws and all
conservative
that, they criminalize homelessness.
send you
So
to
if you
jail. We don't do that here. I mean, they'll throw people in jail that are homeless, but they typically have to do something else, right? They have to commit a crime to not just being homeless isn't enough.
just sleeping on a bench won't land you in jail. Yeah, but
Right. I mean, they
if you
definitely
do anything else,
right. Then yeah.
you better watch your
Then watch
step.
out. But yeah, people can. I mean, you see it all around. People camped out downtown and anywhere along the freeway, and just all over the place. And it's like there's a lot of people that, and I mean, I've definitely talked to some. I'm sure a lot of people have, that live around here, that they're coming from broken homes. A lot of these people are young. Like the young people I've talked to that are like in their 20s or whatever, they're not lazy. I mean, I'm not saying they have good work ethics and they're on top of it or anything like that. No, but they're coming from a bad background, right? They're not coming from a good home. They're screwed from the start. They had like a really bad upbringing and often, been abused in one fashion or another. And they're just trying to get away, right, from the abuse, and they have no one to go to. Where do they go, right?
Yeah.
And it's tough once you become homeless. It's hard to get that stain off of you, right? And the things that people often have to do when they are homeless, like people get desperate, right? They resort to prostitution or theft, various crimes, whatever. To get by.
Doing whatever it is you have to get by, whether it's legal or not. Yeah.
But then it's
and then it just leads to that revolving door of like where you're in and out of the system. And I mean, like anybody that's been in the system will tell you it's much easier to get in than it is to get out.
Yeah, but so the idea that they don't require you to complete this treatment program or to be sober, right, or to have a job, that this is that you're given this housing. It's not going to be like you're
have a place to sleep.
You're not getting a fancy
as a human being, you deserve at least a place to freaking sleep. Like,
right.
In the wealth in arguably the wealthiest, most prosperous nation in the world, like you should at least be able to go to bed, like in a place with a bed.
All right, so we agree on this. Let's move to a different section to address this. All right, vacant housing. Okay, there's a lot of vacant housing. We've talked about this too previously. Vacant housing, right? There's a lot of that in the United States. So I did a little digging, and so the highest vacancy rates, all right, are in Vermont, Maine, and Alaska. Those are the three states with the highest home vacancy rates. In Vermont, almost 23%, Maine almost 23%, Alaska almost was 20.5%. So those three states.
Does Alaska also include Canada? Sorry. Go on.
So more than 315,000 unoccupied homes in three states, those three states. And that's based on a lending tree analysis of recent census data, right? So of those three states combined, that alone, there's 315,000 unoccupied homes just in those three states. All right. Go ahead. What?
No. You please continue. I
All right.
apologize.
All right. Who has the lowest rate? Oregon has the lowest housing vacancy rate at 7.76%. All right. Washington comes in second at 7.87% vacancy, and Connecticut third, 8.09% vacancy. Again, this is according to the census data analyzed by Lending Tree. So while these states, right, Oregon, Washington, and Connecticut, have the lowest housing vacancy rates, that doesn't mean they have the fewest vacant homes, right? So almost 521,000 unoccupied housing units across Oregon, Washington, and Connecticut, those three states that have the lowest rates. There's 521,000 unoccupied units, right? They have a lower rate, but they have higher populations. That's how that is, right?
Sure.
So nearly 206,000 more vacant homes across Oregon, Washington, and Connecticut than what I mentioned in Vermont, Maine, and Alaska. So just between these 6 states, right, that I just mentioned, right? That's over. What did I say? Yeah, it's like 836,000 unoccupied homes, right? Between those 6 states.
How many?
836,000 as of 2022. Of those 6 states. That's just those 6 states, right? The lowest and the highest of, vacancy rates combined. But yeah, you see 315,000 unoccupied homes in, right, Alaska, Maine, and Vermont. 521,000 unoccupied homes in Oregon, Washington, and Connecticut. Right? So we got the housing. It's here. Like we could put all those people, right? Let's just say that number is roughly correct for the sake of discussion, that 600,000 people are homeless. We could house all of them and still have 800 or 230,000 homes left over between those 6 states alone. Now, keep in mind that what a lot of these vacant homes are vacation homes that sit vacant because they're someone's property, but they're a vacation home, or they're trying to sell the house, but it's sitting vacant just because somebody's already moved and it hasn't sold yet. Right? There's different reasons why a house might be vacant. Obviously, so home prices in states with higher vacancy rates are often, but not always, lower than in states with lower vacancy rates. So like a median home prices across the 10 states with the highest vacancy rates are on average about $18,000 lower than the 10 states with the lowest vacancy rates, right? So typically a lower vacancy rates mean, coincides with, higher home prices, right? And higher vacancy rates typically coincides with lower prices, but not always. There's other factors that can also affect price, of course, like location, the different kinds of rates that are being offered to borrowers, square footage, the reason
work available, I imagine.
What's that?
As far as like I said, like work, like industries available like in those cities. I mean,
yeah,
right. Yeah.
There's a lot of different factors, right? But if both vacancy rates and home prices are relatively low, it could mean sellers are parting with their homes for less money than they could have potentially gotten, right? If vacancy rates are low and housing prices are high, it could signify the market is highly competitive and that lower income people might have a problem finding a house, right? That's Oregon, big time. On the flip side, high vacancy rates and high home prices, high vacancy rates and high home prices can suggest that an area has unique characteristics, such as being a vacation hotspot or targeted by investors, right?
Okay, yeah,
right?
yeah.
That keeps the vacancy rates high and the home prices high, right? investors or
exclusivity. Right.
Right. High vacancy rates and low home prices might mean an area is experiencing socioeconomic hardships, right?
Detroit.
Prices are low, but lots of vacancies because people don't want to live there. So, but that's kind of some of what you can derive or speculate is what's going on, depending on vacancy rates and home prices. So that's why people study stuff like this. But obviously, affordable housing is a major issue for Americans, not just the homeless. But we have the housing available, as we clearly know, right? That we have all this available housing that's basically going unused.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely time to get creative about creating different programs with different incentives for how to use these vacant properties.
I believe it was George Carlin that said that we start with the golf courses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he was not a fan of the golf course.
Well, I mean, he was not a fan of a lot of things. that list is long, but
right.
I mean, if we're talking about not enough room for all these people, yeah, there's room, yeah, there's houses. So where's the problem? Is it that all these homeless people are so damn lazy they don't deserve a roof over their head? I sincerely doubt that it's that.
No, of course. So right.
So what is the issue? Why do we have all these empty houses, and why do we have all these roofless humans?
Right. So there's a lot of stuff to that, but the bottom line is we haven't made enough of a priority to take care of the homeless and the vulnerable. We've made that less of a priority than we have satisfying the wealthy and powerful.
If we were taking care of them, would they be homeless, my man? That's the issue. like these people aren't taken care of.
No, we're not taking care of, right, because it costs money to take care of the homeless, right? And to help people with all these different types of issues that are causing the homelessness. That costs money, and our society, often doesn't want to spend that money, right? They don't want tax increases, right? Typically, I mean, nobody likes paying taxes, but that's how you pay for things, like your roads, like your clean air, like your clean water. If you want firefighters or cops to show up when someone breaks into your house, right? You got to pay for that stuff. If you want a military to protect you from invasion, you got to pay for that. So basically, yes, that's the issue. Congress has not funded long-term solutions at the scale necessary. That's the bottom line. Is we as citizens haven't put the pressure on our leaders, the necessary pressure, political pressure on them, financial pressure on them, to develop these long-term solutions, which involve housing first, right? But basically, what they need to do, Congress needs to expand rental assistance to basically anybody who's eligible, make it available to those who are homeless, and build and preserve homes that are affordable, right? That we need more affordable housing available, right, for people with low incomes, right? There's a lot of development we see for, businesses. I see a lot of construction for commercial construction going on all the time. And in the more upscale, like Lake Oswego, you see housing construction going on all the time. What we need more of is more affordable housing, right? For those at the bottom level, right? And we need to expand those voluntary supportive services, right? Like different services like for counseling or job search programs or different other types of assistive services that can be helpful, but allow them to be voluntary. Don't require them to, don't make those programs a condition of, or services a condition of.
Right, but make it available and make it clear that these things are available, and the people that want the help are gonna go and get the help. But the first thing that they need is a freaking shower and a place to sleep at night.
We got to make those things available to them, and that's this. That right. So we know that there's places available everywhere in every state, right? In every city, there's so many units, housing, homes that are vacant. Um, so we're building more housing it is even necessary because it's already there. So we have to find a more creative way of providing incentives to people who own these properties, whatever they are, whether they're condos or houses or whatever, apartments.
Well, that and that would obviously have to come from some sort of like government subsidy, saying that these are people, I mean, the government needs money more than anybody else I've ever met in my entire fucking life. And so why wouldn't the government be like, here is a little bit of money, landlords, so that these people can pay taxes, and so that they'll be paying me and you. Everybody wins. Just let them live here. Here's their rent. They'll get it.
Right. I mean, and I think some landlords will go for that. Certainly not all. Some will want to avoid it because they'll want to hold out for higher rents from people with more money. But I think if you make it attractive enough, there's a limit to how much money you can provide. Whether it's
I mean, they've made corn farming pretty good.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, these landlords can make that money without sitting on a tractor. Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, as far as and a lot of those you're talking about the agricultural subsidies go to like a lot of corporate farms.
Well, they do now. I mean, what do you think that was the intent of that act? I mean, like, of course not. But I mean, like, that there we go, unpacking a different can of worms from the same can of worms, because it's all the same worms.
Well,
it's all worms, unfortunately.
Right.
But
well, the bottom line is you got to get people to be willing to pay for it. You got to get voters got to see the benefit of providing housing and being willing to pay the money for the housing, without preconditions, and see that the results are clear, that housing retention rates are much higher if you don't require them to meet certain preconditions, if you don't require them to take part in the services that you offer, that they'll use them if you don't make it mandatory. And that it's just people have if you give them stable housing, then they have a shot at turning things around. But it's not going to happen. It's much harder to make that happen and turn things around if you're giving them all these requirements, because then all you got to do is make one mistake and you're out. And you're right back to square one. People make mistakes. Yeah. And then it's like you don't. It's again, like it's a human right, that people need shelter. It's not like a nice to have. You need it. It's a need, like you need food. And
absolutely. And I feel like, I mean, like, if rent wasn't so much of an issue, I mean, like, if housing wasn't so much of an issue to so many people, I mean, I don't want to say every, that's hyperbolic, but like, so many businesses that you go into, like, especially these days, are short-staffed because, quote unquote, nobody wants to work anymore. But like, what it is that nobody wants to work for nothing anymore when they got bills to pay. If people weren't
getting tired of killing themselves,
worried, exactly, just to be able to fucking barely make rent. Yeah. Like, if people like had a place to live, and just like, oh man, I need spending money so that I can go grab sushi with my homies on Friday. Like, yeah, sure, I'll go and freaking, work, 4 hours, 3 days a week at, Walmart or Nordstrom or like wherever the hell. Like, I mean, it's like all those Wisconsin cheese ads say, man, or happy cows make good cheese. Like, I mean, like they're all like, we're already basically being treated like, just like cattle, like the lower people on the totem pole, or the lower people like in the societal castes, are the producers, and they get treated like, shut the fuck up and get the fuck back to work, when in reality they could be told, thank you so much for providing these things for us, these higher up people than you. We are going to extend a small amount of our comforts down to you in hopes that you will be happy with what you're getting, and maybe you'll get us more and better. And like it doesn't take much. It wouldn't take much, but like even it feels like even that, like nowadays in 2023 is too much. And we're getting to the point now where I mean like homelessness and mental illness and stuff is exploding in a really meaningful way lately. And it's not like there's no reason for it, and it's not that everybody's lazy and doesn't want to work anymore. So what is it like?
Right. Well, I mean, I would think what we're getting to is that this is a systemic issue, right? And that we're not putting people's humanity first. We're putting the profits of wealthy people and of corporations, their tax breaks for billionaires, tax breaks for the wealthy.
But they work so much harder. They work so much harder, though. I mean, like if they didn't work so much harder, why would they be so much richer?
Right. Well, certainly there's a lot of I've definitely talked to some folks who feel that way, right? And there are some wealthy people who do work very hard, and there are some business owners that do work very hard, but they need to pay their fair share, right, of what they owe.
There's a lot of poor people that work really fucking hard too, and they don't seem to get any farther along. Like, I know a lot of them.
There's a lot of people like, I mean, just myself. I mean, I come from a, I guess, upper middle class background, and I've grown accustomed to that. I mean, I've had to struggle my whole life, but I've still done all right.
Well, you could work a little harder, couldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, clearly. Right.
And that's the thing, is that like it's all your fault that you're not rich.
But I had a lot of advantages to begin with, like that most people didn't get. Right.
Which makes you that much more of a failure.
Right. I should be much further along.
Yeah. Right? So shame on you. Like, I mean, and that's the mentality that so many people have.
Right. Well, that's the mentality they have because a lot of people, it's easier to think that way, to think like, oh, I succeeded. I did it all by myself. They don't acknowledge the help of their parents. They don't acknowledge the help that was provided to them through their, state subsidized school that educated them, or schools, right? They don't acknowledge all the things that were provided to them by the government, right? Government laws and protections, right? That ensured, that they would have safe roads, and that they would have a rule of law that would allow for, commerce and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that we pay for through our taxes, right, that help maintain a system. It's just like you got to pay so much, and I know nobody likes the IRS, nobody likes to pay taxes, boo-hoo, but you got to fund them properly, or they can't collect the taxes. It's harder to run an audit on a wealthy person. And I don't think this should surprise anyone. It's, by orders of magnitude more expensive to audit someone who's wealthy. And the wealthier, the harder it gets, right? Because they have much more complicated financial investments, different companies, blah, blah, blah. Gets accountants and lawyers. It's very, very complicated versus very cheap to do, working guy, most of us, just sort of working people, much easier to audit one of us, no problem, but it costs a lot more so that's definitely one of the biggest beneficiaries from cuts to the IRS will be it's harder to audit the wealthy, and it's harder to make them pay their fair share, and make it easier for them to move money around and not pay it. And I don't want to pay, I mean, certainly not all wealthy people are not bad people, and I understand people not wanting to pay taxes, right? Wanting to pay as little as possible. It is a human instinct to try and get the best deal that you can.
Sure, but the stigmatization of people that are of lower incomes or of no income that like need help, they get classified as like, oh, if you're poor, you're lazy. You're not necessarily poor if you're lazy, and you're not necessarily a hard worker if you're rich. I mean, like, I think everybody knows that, but I mean, like, I think that's been twisted to a point to where like there are more hardworking poor people than there are lazy or at least as many hardworking poor people as there are lazy poor people. And it's not the work ethic that makes you poor more of the time than not, because of how many people that work so hard and still, like can't afford to go see the doctor. I mean, like in the United States, at least, working hard doesn't mean you're okay anymore. Like more often than not, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with housing being so expensive and the cost of living
And
being,
just yeah, and I mean, we're talking about housing, but I mean, just like in general, like working hard doesn't equal you're okay in the US anymore. Like there are a lot more like ins and outs and like caveats than it seems like the original, like that raw feeling of the American dream like really should be. Like if you work your ass off every day, and you get up and you go to work and you come home and then you take care of yourself and your family, like you should be all right. But there's a lot of people that do that and they're not all right. And it's not because they're lazy and don't work hard, or are even like unintelligent or unworthy. It's another one of those societal systems.
People aren't being paid a decent wage, a livable wage. Yeah, I mean, it makes it very difficult to.
But we're also all trained to vilify those that have less. Just like, oh, if you're poor, it's because you don't work hard, and it's just not true. But there's so many people that are still subscribing to that notion of
right.
Hard work equals prosperity, but hard work doesn't necessarily equal prosperity anymore, unfortunately. And that leads to homelessness and mental illness and all of the rest of the things that go with all of that.
Well, I mean, there are, I would say, even, there certainly are people who are in a bad spot because of their own choices. But even that, like, they're making bad choices because of specific reasons, right?
Well, yeah, and do they deserve to be miserable and screwed for the rest of their lives?
Right. I mean, if you're mentally ill, if you're having if you're having psychotic events that make it difficult for you to function, right? Yeah, it could be very difficult to maintain a job, right? Which then you could end up being homeless just on that alone, or even like people with like on autism spectrum disorder, on the spectrum that, those people are very vulnerable. A lot of those folks aren't able to hold down jobs unless they're very high functioning, or if they do hold down a job, it's at a basic level.
It's menial, right? Exactly. And so does somebody with autism spectrum disorder deserve to be the lowest person at their job for the rest of their lives and make the absolute bare minimum because of the fact that like their brain works differently than everybody else? I don't think so. I mean,
no, and as far as homelessness goes, I mean, yeah, we should be able to provide housing for the most vulnerable, right?
Right.
That is should be a feature of any civilized society, that if we're going to call ourselves a civilized society, that we make those allotments, that we make that commitment to say this is simply something we must do if we are to maintain our dignity and our humanity and
right. And then you can actually make it a choice. And like, because there are homeless shelters in every major city in the nation and in a lot of the smaller ones as well. And it's like, look, we don't have a house for you here, right, but if you can get here, you can get a house there, and so then it's just like, okay, so you can stay here and live on the streets, or you can go there and like, have a house, and then you can start working toward, getting a job. There's a community college there. Like it's not like, it's not like, there's I can't imagine how many homeless people there are right now that if they had a place to like sleep at night and be able to take a shower, they would be able to like, okay, now I'm going to get student loans and go to school and go and do this career thing that I want to do, and so now banks are making money. I mean, like there are upsides to this, that it's playing the long game. And I feel like in the like in the financial society that we live in, as far as, I mean, like, if your company doesn't, have more profit this year than it did last year, then your company is doing poorly. I mean, I forget which economist said, growth for the sake of growth is the mentality of a cancer cell.
Right.
But like, I mean, if you play the long game and you get all these homeless people, all, like, there's tons of homeless people out there, and some of them want to be homeless. I mean, like, there are, like, I couldn't imagine like what percentage of them, but some of them like are just like,
they just want to be, they want to be out. Yeah.
They just want to be out there and do their thing. Fine. Okay, fine. But all the people that don't want to be homeless and are out there and like feel like they don't have any options, if you give them that option, they will absolutely fucking jump at it. And like, they will take their house, they will get their roof over their head, and they will get their shit together, and like, okay, like, now I'm stable enough to go and get a job. Now I'm stable enough to go and get an education. I mean, like, that opportunity, like, we have the ability to provide that opportunity to up to 600,000 people at any given night in this nation right now. And like, why not? Why not? That it would, okay. It's an investment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of money, right? But not just that, it's also, it's not just the money of, the action of putting in the housing, how much that would cost, but it's also the coordination of that. That's a massive effort to, you got to look at, where are these folks? They're scattered about the country. Where are you going to put them? You've got to implement these new programs that incentivize these people that own vacant properties, right, to make them available to, housing first programs for homeless folks. That you got to set that up. That costs money just to set, when you got to pass that, right, in Congress. Then you got, and Congress, the Senate, have the president sign it. Then you got to plan that, implement it, carry it out. That all costs money and takes a little time to execute. So it's not like you can just flip a switch, right? But it begins.
Well, of course not. But again, that's what I was talking about. I mean, like, it's a long game, and it's a big investment. But I mean, like, I feel like that's an investment that could pay off. Americans pride themselves on their ingenuity, and like,
it's cheaper to do it. It's cheaper to do it than the traditional way.
So like, I mean, so many Americans have come up with so many amazing things. Like, why not give more Americans more opportunities for more of us to come up with more of these amazing things? I mean,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
We haven't invented everything, but I mean, like, Americans have come up with a lot of cool shit.
Right.
So why not give even more depth of our population to come up with more of that cool shit?
Yep, I agree. And I think related to that is that not only will we benefit from these folks becoming more productive, because some of them won't. Some of them aren't going to be more productive because they can't.
Of course not. I mean, like I'm still here.
Right. So that's
one.
That is what it is. You're locked in. But that, like, if you have a disability, you may not, being housed may not boost your necessarily your productivity, but it'll keep you safe. It'll keep you out of trouble in that, you won't be like walking the streets with somebody, like somebody who's like, talking to themselves or not paying attention. Somebody who's just not aware of their surroundings can get in, just walk into a lot of trouble very easily. They're not necessarily safe without someone with them to guide them, right? they need assistance. That we as a society as a whole would be better. Not just in the sense that we would feel good about ourselves because we were helping people, but that you're not going to see homeless people on the streets like you do now, right? You're not going to have these homeless little shanty towns that you see in a lot of places, like throughout, Portland or Seattle or San Francisco, LA, or wherever, other cities. You're going to see a lot fewer of those. You're going to see, that people will feel that, that even if they're not getting a feel good from like, oh, we're helping people, that they will notice, they will perceive the difference, right? In there not being homeless camps everywhere, right? And homeless people walking around everywhere, and that the places look nicer, and that we do that as a whole. The society benefits from these people, these disadvantaged people, having a place to live and having that option to turn things around. That will make help be our society more productive.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying, is that I feel like the people that have the drive but not the opportunity will better serve the people with the opportunity but not the drive.
Yeah, I agree. And also too, I think that, well, there's
here we go again.
There's a lot of people. I don't want to go down too many tangents, but I think there's a lot of people who do need help, that do have a lot to offer. There is a lot they do have to offer society. It's just because of their situation, they need a little bit more help, or maybe a lot more help, to be able to make those contributions. But I think the more we're able to do that, and I think you see that with yeah, there's a lot that we need to do about mental health and in our country, in the healthcare system and homelessness. There's a lot of things to deal with. But
homelessness and healthcare, like specifically like mental health care, that goes hand in hand. Like how many people have been ruined by, a bad doctor visit?
Yeah, it's definitely they're definitely out there. And yeah, it's some of these expensive treatments, can, even if you're wealthy, if you get a serious illness, some of these treatments can be going hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. They can clean you out if you don't have the right.
Well, right. When you get a couple, if they're, in their 70s or 80s these days, and they've managed to save up, $500,000 over their careers, and then one of them gets a cancer diagnosis and they decide to fight it, they'll burn $500,000 in a year if they're lucky, and then now what do you fucking do? You worked your entire life for this, and one bad visit to the doctor last year means now you're both destitute now. Thank you, by the way, for your service.
Right. So yeah, we got a lot of things like that again, all these things.
It just doesn't feel fair to me.
Well, no, it's not fair. The world's never been fair either,
no, of course not. But but like when we have more opportunities than ever to be fair to more people than ever, and then just be like, yeah, you know what, the world's never been fair, so fuck you. Like,
well, I definitely think we can definitely be fairer than we've been. Certainly, I think we've spent way too much time and resources on, worshiping the wealthy and the celebrities, and lavishly compensating, the top performer, right? And I think you do. That's the thing, is you do need to compensate well the high performers. But even if that's the case, you can't forget about
that doesn't mean screw the low performers, though. Absolutely. The people that perform well deserve their accolades. But the people that perform at average or below average don't deserve nothing. They don't deserve to just die on the vine.
Right.
They deserve,
the street.
Yeah, I mean, they deserve at least the. I mean, like, 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 how many indignities are you willing to suffer just for like not having a job? I mean, just like, do you not deserve to eat? Do you not deserve to have a bed? Do you not deserve to be able to, take a dump in a running toilet? Like, what do you not deserve for not having a job?
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're not going to give somebody luxury treatment here, but we want people to be able to have, a room, like you said, a place to sleep, place to eat, go to the bathroom, that you have the basics that are available to you. And that if you need, help, assistive services, that they're available to you, and to give you some type of assistance to help you, manage your situation and get out of your situation that you're in. But yeah, that you need a place to stay to be able to do that. You're just not going to be able to pull that off if you're sleeping, sleeping on the side of the highway or something. It's going to be a lot harder to do well on job interviews, right? Set up those job interviews and go on them in your suit, looking all sharp.
It's like Greg Girardo said, I mean, like, this guy's got his underwear on the outside of his pants. Something tells me his resume isn't up to date.
Who said that?
Greg Girardo. He was a stand-up comedian.
Good.
But he was talking about walking down the street, and a homeless person said, "Hey, give me $1." And his first thought was, what's he going to spend it on? Booze, drugs, prostitutes.
Right.
And I was like, wait, that's what I'm going to spend it on. Yeah. No, Greg Girardo was
so judgy, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, Greg Girardo was a funny guy. Yeah, no, he died young. I think of drugs. But no, he would have laughed at that too. But yeah, no, yeah.
I mean, clearly, that's the thing.
Yeah,
you gotta pay. You gotta pay for it.
Everybody's people. Just because you don't have a good job doesn't mean you don't freaking deserve to be able to, sleep in a bed, be able to take a shower, be able to eat.
Yep. But I mean, that requires that we all got to. I mean, and that's the truth. All the things that have to be addressed, right? And there's a lot of things, whether it's the homeless crisis, whether it's healthcare issues or addressing the crisis we have with mental health in this country, to climate change, right? That all that stuff's going to cost a lot of money, right? We got to pay for that with taxes. People got to be willing to step up and acknowledge that. I mean, and the truth is, the United States is a low tax country compared to most other industrialized nations. That that we pay a much lower percentage in taxes overall than a lot of other countries do. Especially in Western Europe.
Yeah. At the price of what?
Right. Well,
right.
Yeah.
What we've been talking about this entire freaking time.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. This is another. Yeah, Finland did actually have a major success with housing first. They essentially nearly eliminated homelessness in their country through their housing first program, and. Obviously it wasn't that many people. Finland's a small country, but I think it was I don't know. They had I can't remember how many homeless people.
Well, right, but let's look at ratios here. I mean, yeah. I mean, how many people live in Finland versus how many homeless people were there versus how many people there are now? Versus their GDP, to their population. I mean, how different are the numbers really when you average things out?
Right. Well, I think the bottom line is that the program was highly effective. That's the bottom line. But again, you see with these countries like Finland or Norway or Sweden, these are high tax countries. They heavily tax all of their citizens. But they get more for it. there's
And don't they routinely survey as being among like the most happy populations of countries in the world, like on the regular as well?
generally, uh, yeah,
So I mean, like, so that's got to
yeah,
be, I mean, like, that's got to say something.
yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, they have, yeah, in general, they have very high wellness scores. Uh, they're good school systems, good healthcare systems. Uh, well educated populace, high income countries. So yeah, but
And
um,
in general, their populations like are happy.
yeah, but they pay a lot in taxes. Like
Well, right.
they,
So taxes don't mean misery now, do they? I mean, like it's I mean, like you get what you frickin' pay for. And
but
like
they're
we
also,
don't
I
pay
mean,
much in the way in taxes, and it turns out we don't fucking get much either, do we?
right. Well, I mean, we do get some things, but we don't get enough because we don't pay enough. You don't pay
Well,
into it.
that which is like reciprocating the point I was just saying. Like these people are heavily taxed, but they're happy and
Well,
they're
this
healthy and they're
this
prosperous.
part of the issue is cultural differences. The United States is uniquely suspicious of government, more so than I would say a lot of countries where, from the founding of our country, very anti-government, anti-taxation, from the beginning. Whereas, I think a lot of other European countries, or even you could see it in Canada, there's a stronger respect for authority, a deeper respect for government institutions.
Well, and don't they like I mean, like all these places with the socialized healthcare and like the bigger like social safety net, like don't the people in it seem to be freaking better off too? So like I mean, so who's wrong? Like I mean, like who's got the wool over their eyes here?
Well, I
That's
think usually what, yeah, opponents. Right, so yeah, what we're talking about, we're arguing for both of us is like, yeah, increased taxation, more more social programs to help the needy in our country through increased taxation, which is, a pretty typical progressive, you know, uh, desire in general, and typically what conservatives are against. They don't, they want lower taxes, right? Smaller government, generally speaking.
right. Because if all the rich people had more money, they'd help the poor people more, right?
Well, they,
Are you fucking kidding me? Like I'm it just it
well, it's true. I mean, there are a lot of conservative people who do view, like, the poor as suspicious. There are a lot of people who do look at it as their fault, that they did this to themselves, right? And that they deserve to be homeless, that they caused it themselves. And I mean, and to some degree that could even be true, but I think it's irrelevant. Even if someone is the cause, made some bad choices, they still need a place to live. They're not going to
yeah,
turn around
yeah,
and fix
yeah,
it up.
yeah. People making bad choices doesn't mean that they deserve to be like absolutely miserable. Like in the wealthiest nation in the world, where like in the land of the free and the home of the brave, like we should not have the kind of homelessness crisis that we're having right now. The money is there, the housing is there, the land is there, the resources are there. I mean, like we have the food, we have the water, we have the jobs, we have the resources. So why can't these people have it? Because they don't deserve it. Why don't they deserve it? Like because they don't have a job right now, because they don't have a home right now. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, think about it. How much is this even spoken about, really? This
uh,
topic.
More lately, more in the last 5 years than I've ever heard, like in the rest of my life, and like even more so, like once COVID shut the freaking world down, and then and then those people that were like had always been teetering on that razor's edge of like I'm doing fine versus I'm homeless, and now they're leaning more toward homeless, and now it's like, oh wait, no, this is me too, holy crap. It's like, yeah, you've never been in the club, and now you're looking at being like all the way like kicked out the door, and now it's an issue.
Yeah.
And like I'm not saying shame on them for finally getting it. I'm saying, see, now you finally freaking get it. Like,
Yeah.
this has been more of an issue than you have realized for so long because you've just been barely keeping out of it. And now that you're like on the brink of like getting into like that same situation that so many other people are in, and so many of those people are in that situation now it's an issue. And yes, it's been an issue for this entire freaking time.
Well,
But
there's a
it's
lot of people that just aren't aware, right? They don't necessarily follow politics. If they live in certain areas, they might not encounter, the
well,
homeless.
right, but now they want to be pissed off about that motorhome that parked across the street from their house 6 months ago and is still there.
Right,
And it's just like, there, but for the grace of God goes you, sir. Like,
right, yeah, right. Like, yeah, that's the thing. That's a great. I mean, none of us are responsible for. It's like I didn't choose my parents, right? None of us. I was fortunate to have pretty good parents. Other people not so much, right? That can make a really big difference. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to college. Not everybody is, right? And I grew up in a safe neighborhood. Not everybody is. It's a lot of advantages right out of the gate, right? Not to mention being a white male, right? I basically
right,
in
yeah.
the United States, I basically won the lottery. So I mean, I'm very fortunate, but at least I acknowledge it,
I
right?
mean,
That I'm
yeah.
aware that I was given that these things were given to me. There was nothing for me to do, right?
Right, yeah, and it's not that you're like necessarily any better off, but you don't have quite as many hills to jump over.
Right. Well, I mean, there's more options open to me than someone who wasn't able to go to college, right? There's
Right.
more options, right, than I've been able to live and do things like if you have a family that has money, like they can bail you out, you know, uh, which my family has done from time to time. Whenever I got into trouble or something, I ran out of money, or I could, occasionally count on some help from my family to save my ass for a time being until I, got back to work or, got the car fixed or whatever it was. So not everybody has that, right? They don't have they don't have parents. They didn't even have parents, right? Or if they did,
Yeah,
maybe they weren't good. Maybe they were abusive.
or just or negligent. I mean, like,
Or you're born with a brain that rebels against you, and
don't get me started.
then but whatever the case, I mean, we have to acknowledge, but I think that's part of it is an awareness thing. Is there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily paying attention to it, and so hopefully that's part of what we're doing here is a little bit of awareness creation. It's like about homelessness and about fighting it through the housing first approach, right? And that accepting that housing is a human right and that everyone deserves it.
These days, that should absolutely be true, regardless of anything else. Like, if you're a human being, you deserve to have a roof over your head, food in your stomach, water.
Yeah.
You deserve to be able to live, if not comfortably, at least live, depending on what your definition of comfortable is. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people sleeping under bridges that would consider like just a roof with walls and running water and a soft place to sleep as comfortable. I mean, like, people at least deserve that.
And I think too, there's a lot of wealthy people that maybe they don't want to spend, that definitely don't want to spend money on being taxed more, but that they'll be much happier with a cleaner city, right?
Right, but they're looking for the magic wand. Like they don't want to. Like it's another one of those cases of like, I want something done about this, but I don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other problem too, is that some people think that just taxing the wealthy is going to do it, but it's not. Like it's got to be everybody. Everybody's got to pay more. It's not just.
But I mean,
Especially
like,
the middle class, not the poor necessarily, but the middle class needs to pay more. If we're going to address climate change, if we're going to address the healthcare system, mental health issues, and homelessness, and maintain like our military, things like that, we gotta pay more for it.
We gotta pay more, but on top of pay more, like, we gotta see something from it, and that's the thing about, like, I like what we were talking about with the inherent suspicion of government from we, United States
and you
citizens,
can't,
is that like if you're gonna like just like reach into my pocket and take all this money out, show me something, I mean,
well,
like,
all right.
like
Well,
every pothole I hit's gonna piss me off,
but I mean, like I said, I mean, the VA and HUD have been doing these housing first programs for a number of years now with success, right?
Right.
So, I mean, they're
But
showing that it does work, but I mean, fucking HUD's funding is not very well funded. It has funding, but that funding gets cut a lot. Uh,
right, despite showing positive results, they still lose money. So why? What's more important?
well, wait, because Republicans only want to fund the military and
Oh, you said the R word.
the police.
Um,
Right? That everything, most of other government, they want to
yeah,
defund in general, right? They've
yeah,
become so anti-government in our country. They want to defund basically the rest of the government that does provide these important services that do make life better for a lot of people.
because they've been
thinking,
trained because they've been trained to think that the people that need help aren't deserving of it.
right? Yeah, sure. I mean, through the media, I mean, that's certainly what you're going to hear on Fox News, right, or Newsmax or whatever. Any
Right, yeah.
outlet,
But
they're
that's
going to
the thing,
treat
is
it like
it's
these people are lazy scammers that are taking advantage.
yeah. If you're poor and homeless, all you had to do is work hard and get a job, and you would have been fine. Bullshit,
Right.
But and it's just like like you work hard, you work your ass off every day of your life. Are you fine? It's like, okay, you're fine, but could you be better? Oh, maybe, but is it because you got to work harder, or is it because you're getting screwed and you just like don't want to admit that? I mean, like, was it Mark Twain that said it's much easier to fool someone than to convince them that they've been fooled?
Something like that. Yeah, I think it might have been. I don't remember. But well, yeah, and it's like once somebody's been fooled for a while too, they don't want to acknowledge it because
Right.
it's too painful.
Right, and I think that's what old Sam was getting at.
It's like it's easier just to go along with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, which I don't know, who originated the quote, don't hold on to a mistake just because you spent a long time making it.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's like, what is it? It's like sunk costs, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people will. It's like the sunk cost fallacy, where people just keep throwing money at a problem, thinking like, well, just this
Yeah.
bit
I've
more.
already spent so much money on it. I need to keep spending money on it to make it positive again. When it's
Otherwise,
like,
it'll have all been wasted.
Yeah. Sunk costs versus cut your losses.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is there's differences in mentality. There's a mentality that, if you tax me more, that I'm worse off, right? I mean, and that's what most people are going to feel. That's how they're going to feel when they pay more in taxes. You're going to be like, that's how we all feel. I don't want to pay this much in taxes. My taxes went up. This is terrible, right?
Well, right.
I don't like it when my
Unless those taxes
go.
were going to things that were directly and like perceivably benefiting us, which is, I think, what a big part of the issue is that like.
Well, they do. The problem is that people are not informed about it, right?
Right.
They're not aware necessarily.
No. They need the picture book. They don't want to read about it. They need a photograph.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. People are conditioned. I mean, I always like to try and give people a little bit of a break, because there's a lot of folks who don't follow politics, because they're, for whatever reason, they're busy. It requires some nuanced understanding, and I'll work at it a little bit. But if you don't, then you're kind of like flying blind. If you don't follow like how your country is run, how your state is run, how your nation is run, how the system works, then you're just kind of like letting them do it and going like, all right, I trust you.
Yeah. Right. No, it's okay and it's healthy to be suspicious. It's okay to ask questions, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's not okay to outright reject something just because you don't understand it.
right. I think that most people, they don't like, how many people have heard of housing first? I don't think very many people. I don't think it's a
I
something new.
I honestly I hadn't like I consider myself to be, fairly progressively minded, and I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it to me, and then I
I
started
mean,
reading
it's just
about it,
like
and then you sent me
it's
even
a
more stuff.
fund. It's
Because
a
it doesn't matter.
I mean, it's a basic concept, but in truth, it's revolutionary in regards to like what's been done. Where it's like, oh, you have to meet all these requirements, and then the other thing is funding is limited. So, right, yeah, we have these programs, but they don't necessarily have enough money to really provide the services that they're there to provide. So it's not just that the programs exist, but there needs to be the sufficient funding there for them to be able to provide those services, right? Pay for those counselors, pay for the facilities for the counselors, or pay for the rental assistance. But that we're not good about in general as a society. Like I'm getting into speculation time here. I would speculate that the European societies are a little bit better about that, about discussing the social benefits of their systems, that in some ways are superior to ours, right? Uh,
Mhm.
that they
Well, they've
have,
been coexisting for, about 1,000 years longer than we have. So,
right. And they pretty much all have universal health care. Most of the countries, more or less, something near it, approaching it, right? And they have very clear benefits from that. And those countries in general tend to pay higher taxes, but they're also aware of the benefits that they all have health care, more or less, and that their rents are high, but more reasonable in a lot of those countries, let's say, than here. And they'll have more workers
because, right, because they have less shit to worry about if something goes wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, rent is high, but if you break your arm, you go get a cast on, and then you freaking go to work in a week,
I mean, there's a
and
reason
like
why,
work is, and you've been subsidized by like the government and whatnot to make sure that you get the medical care you need to heal your arm, and to pay your rent so that you can go back to work and still be in a good place when you're healed, and you can go back to work and continue being productive. And that's the whole thing, is that like in America it's just like, oh well, oh you're down, well fuck you. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the take on America for a while, is it's, yeah, this
well, I mean, like, I've lived here
highly
my whole
aggressive,
life. That's my take on it.
highly aggressive capitalist system, right? There's not much of a safety net. There is one, but it's weak. Very easy to slip through the cracks. Um, and
Well, I mean, you have to very deftly like jump over those cracks if you even want to get anything, even if you are demonstrably disabled.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's the well. I mean, just yeah, you can see like the case managers and a lot of these folks uh, who help these, like homeless people and people with different like substance abuse issues or mental health issues. A lot of these mental health or different counselors, they don't necessarily get paid all that well, and they're certainly not getting rich.
No.
Like anybody who's working for
And why should they? They're just helping poor crazy people.
right, but you want people to still be paid well enough, right, to pay their bills and things.
Well, not everybody.
But people should be paid a living wage, a livable wage at minimum, right? Everyone.
Yeah, you would think.
But I mean, there's a lot of issues wrapped in with our discussion here about our system. But I think we've nailed down that Housing First is a highly effective approach to ending homelessness. It's been very successful in Finland. It's been demonstrated also in the United States in a number of different programs, whether that be through the VA and HUD, or through like the state of New York through their Pathways program. Canada has also had a bunch of successful efforts with Housing First. So there's plenty of data out there, over 30 years of research that's well concluded that providing housing to people without preconditions is a more effective way and a cheaper way to get people housed, to keep them housed, and to get them to use the services that will help improve their lives and improve their stability. It is successful, and hopefully by us discussing this tonight, we've helped make everybody a little bit more aware of that, and you can talk to your friends and family and whoever else and just spread awareness about Housing First, that it's out there, that it exists, that it works, and that it does deserve support. It does need funding. We've got the housing available. It exists. Certainly there'll be some work involved with determining, who's going to provide that housing, whether it's going to be built or whether we fund, whether we provide, some kind of tax incentive or some type of funding incentive to, current homeowners of vacant houses and make use of vacant housing, or just improve and rapidly speed up, affordable housing. But that's something that is a highly important and very urgent thing. We're talking, again, over 600, or somewhere in the neighborhood of 600,000 people in our country homeless, at least. Could be quite a bit more than that. But there is a way to deal with it. There's a very effective way to deal with it, and it's called Housing First. And I'm glad that we could talk to you about it tonight. So that is the end of our show. Jordan, thanks again for joining us and talking with us about this very important and successful program. I thank you for your insights, as always. a lot of good thoughts.
Thank you for your tolerance, sir.
It's my pleasure. So anyway, that's it for this show. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about AI and AGI. All right. So that's been a big topic lately. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and artificial generative or general intelligence, which is generally what people are thinking of when they're thinking about robots, taking over the world.
Skynet.
Right. Exactly. Terminator style. So we're going to talk about those two things. We're talking about the benefits of AI, how it's already benefited us in numerous ways, that we all benefit from AI already, currently.
Video games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so many other ways that we may not even realize. So we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about the potential benefits of the more advanced AGI, all the good that could potentially come from that, as well as all the destructive possibilities, and what our options are for dealing with that and controlling that. It's a major technology that could potentially get out of hand. So how do we come to terms with that? That will be the focus of our next discussion on the breakdown. So until then, take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.